Is this it? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm going to kind of deviate a little bit from the usual. Usually we speak about the Parsha. But this is a very, very special occasion, and we will not have a chance to speak about it. And that is the occasion of Birchas HaChama. Just 1 second. Which is really a very touching moment, and you know that it occurs once in 28 years. If anything reminds us of Hashem having created the world, it is the moment of Birchas HaChama. Nothing does it like that. Just to explain the principles in behind it, which you may have become familiar already, but just briefly. What is this Birchas HaChama about? The sun is here uninterrupted, not like the moon that disappears and reappears. That does not shine and shines. The sun shines all the time, without any interruption, without any change. The principle of Birchas HaChama is there is the rotation of the sun, and the sun rotates around the world, and the rotation is basically, this is what's called a year, which is 365 days. That's what a year is. But actually, number one, it is not exactly 365 days. It's not a half a day. This is why on the common calendar, there's an extra day every 4 years. You're familiar with this, right?
So it's a quarter of a day then, right?
It's a quarter of a day, right. An extra quarter of a day, right. In addition to that, this rotation, even though the sun rotates around the entire globe every day, but it does not represent the moment of creation, the moment when it was put into the sky, except when it reaches that point at exactly the time when it was put into the sky. This meaning in exactly the time means the time of the season and the time and the day of the week. There are 4 sections. There is 4 tkufas in the year. There's tkufas Tishrei, 3 tkufas Nisan, tkufas Teves, tkufas Nisan. Tkufa means the moment, and this is a change in the It's a seasonal change, basically. Nisan is the spring moment. The sun was placed into the sky in Tkufas Nisan. So number one, in order to pinpoint the moment of creation, it has to be in Tkufas Nisan. And in Tkufas Nisan itself, it has to be when the Tkufa falls out on Wednesday morning. And that changes, and that occurs once in 28 years. You can readily see that since it occurs once in 28 years, therefore, 28 is a multiple of 7. Therefore, it occurs every time in the same year of the Shemitah cycle, which is Hag Hail, as this year is a year of Hag Hail.
Oh, so this happens every Hakhel?
No, every fourth Hag Hail.
Oh, yeah. 28 years.
28 years, right?
But I had to say that it would always land on a Hakhel year,
No.
though.
It will always fall under Hag Hail because it's a multiple of 28 is a multiple of 7. And that's Hag Hail occurs once in 7 years. Now I want to talk about the whole concept. The meaning of Torah mitzvahs. Like we discussed another time before, that when Eden, Hashem was giving Eden the Torah, he waited till Eden realized the real essence of the Torah, and they said, Nase v'nishma. You remember we discussed this? That Nase by itself, just obedience, I will do what you tell me, was not acceptable. It had to be Nase v'nishma. I will do, and this will bring me to also understand. It will also open up my mind and heart, and will get me to really relate to it and understand what is going on. Which means that Torah mitzvahs are not meant, should I say, for dummies. Lately there are these volumes that say, everything, computers for dummies, Torah for dummies. Torah mitzvahs are not made for dummies, for idiots. It's meant for human beings. And it's meant not only for human beings, it's meant also to develop and open up and elevate, bring out the best in the human being. To open up a person's intellect, open up a person's heart, so that he really appreciates and sees and lives in the big world, lives in the big creation that Hashem created. We are doing this in davening every day. Don't necessarily realize this, but I'm sure to some extent. In davening, the first portion of davening after Baruch She'omar, there are a few hallelujahs that speak about the world. The various aspects of the world that demonstrates both Hashem's greatness and Hashem's kindness and goodness. Hashem coordinates. We say, Noisen libheim al lachmo, he gives to the behemoth its food, which is really a miracle. You have the animals in the wild, birds, fish, and they have food in abundance. They're not organized, they don't have storage houses. And they grow in tremendous abundance. Every species in its own way. Every species in its own way. We once discussed, I don't remember if I discussed it here, a lion gets up in the morning and it's hungry. And it comes out from its sleep, and it gives a roar. Did you ever hear a lion roar? A lion's roar is really amazing. It really shakes the walls. It's a roar. Powerful animal. It goes out and gives a roar. What's this roar about? It's animalistic on the animal's level, on the animal's way, cognizance that its food is someplace over there in the world.
What? You said cognitive?
Cognizant. You know what cognizance means? Recognition. A sense. It's going out and it'll find its food. This is like a call, where is my food? And he goes out and he finds his food. The entire creation and the greatness of the creation. In fact, the creation is, on the one hand, it is limited, it is finite. The earth, we know exactly the size of the earth. We know its circumference, we know its area, we know exactly the size of the earth. And yet, the earth houses, you could say, an infinite amount of species. It's uncountable. Just the species, the variety of creatures. Even to this day, where we have the scientific methods of identifying and seeking and looking, they're still finding species that they never saw before. They're first beginning to research the ocean bed, under the ocean. The Gemara says, Kol ma sheyesh bayabosha yesh bayam. Every variety that exists on the dry land exists in under the sea. And
what does that mean exactly?
How would you interpret it?
See, I don't want to say anything dumb, but
No, don't say anything dumb. Your question was a little bit on that side. What does it mean?
Does that mean that you get mammal? No, it can't be. How can you have like mammals and reptiles and all the like?
There are mammals and reptiles in the waters too. Yeah. Not everything under the water are fish.
And insect, of course, there's insects.
And this is first being discovered, first being researched, first being identified. And all the supreme qualities of the earth itself, we mentioned it here, but the Baal Shem Tov says, Baal Shem Tov lived approximately 300 years ago. And the Baal Shem Tov said that in the earth there are such secrets, such secret powers that, almost mysterious powers that we can't even fully understand in their nature, what they stand for, how do they operate, such that all the greatest scholars of nature, which today are called scientists, will never discover fully, will never fully understand, will never fathom, will never identify everything that exists in the earth. All the miraculous qualities that the earth possesses. Mind you, the Baal Shem Tov said it before electricity was identified, before we had radio, power, which is all earth qualities, miracle qualities. We don't even know what it is. We know it works. We have no idea what it is. All of these things, this is on just obviously sampling, a drip. All of this is really incumbent. You know what incumbent means? It's obligatory upon us to reflect, because this is what gets us to sense the greatness of the world that we live in and the greatness of the Creator. We, the human being, and amongst the human being, the Jewish people, we were entrusted by Hashem with this world. It was created for us. When they started giving Tanya lessons on radio, today, we take it for granted. Everything is on radio, on television, on internet. But then it was a very big breakthrough. On radio, they have a lesson on Tanya. The Rebbe spoke then. And he said that this is what radio was created for. To be able to reach every Yid in the entire globe, every second, instantaneously. All this is not, surely we identify, we recognize the greatness of the world, but through that we recognize the greatness of the Creator. And not just the greatness of the Creator in terms, he's very great, I better stand in awe. The greatness of the Creator in terms of how the Creator relates to us, what He has revealed to us about Him. How He relates to us. We, in our little minds, when we think of our needs, our requirements, and we are hungry, we say, I don't care about the whole world. All I want is my little piece of bread. So this is like an extreme illustration of the narrow focus that the human being lives in. But this is not what we are really confined to. This is not the way we were meant to live. Of course we have to eat. But we have to know we have to eat. This is a means to an end. We eat, and then we go and do what a human being is supposed to do. An animal, havdil, eats and goes to sleep. A human being eats so that he has koiches to engage his mind and to relate to the Meibush and to relate to life the way the Meibush wants him to live. To the human qualities in life. The human qualities of life is, as I said, all the goodness and greatness that the Rebbe demonstrates and manifests in the world, and our relationship to Hashem Himself. All that is meant for us to actually experience and actually relate to. Because through that, we relate to Hashem. This elevates us, opens our minds. And when our minds open up, our hearts open up. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya, which you probably all learned already, says that when a person reflects on the greatness of the creation, he is like embracing the king. And then he says, although he doesn't see the king himself, he sees only his creation. So this is like the garments of the king. But the garments exist only because the king is in it. And therefore, just like physically in the physical world, if you embrace the king, and the king is in his garments, he does not detract, make any less your connection to the king. You embrace the king in his garments, you're embracing the king, not the garments. You're closer to the king is absolute. The garments don't interfere. It is important, this is like the introduction to what I was going to say, it is important for us to understand that everything that we observe is meant for us to observe. If we observe a beautiful day, it's meant for us to appreciate that the day is beautiful. If we observe that the vastness and the beauty of the world, it is meant for us to observe it. But of course, just like everything else, it has its particular purpose, so that as I said, it develops a person's mind, so that when he begins to learn Torah, begins to come to davening, he has a sense of what's going on. What is the Torah about? Just like the Rebbe created everything in the world, and even more so, the Rebbe is describing the whole world in the Torah. And just as an illustration, Hashem created every little species, every little leaf. Are you aware of the fact that there are no two leaves alike? Do you ever come across that idea, that principle? No two leaves growing on the very same tree are exactly alike.
Same thing with the snowflake.
No two snowflakes. Every snowflake has 6 edges. No two snowflakes are exactly identical. And we're talking about many billions of snowflakes. This is a godly miracle. This is not an accident. This is all meant to demonstrate and to show you what's the greatness of the Creator. And just as we recognize in the creation how Hashem deals with every little creature individually and gives each its place, no two snowflakes ever collide in mid-air. Did you ever hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Snowflakes go all the way in every direction. They never collide in midair. It's mind-boggling. So too, and many, many times more so, every individual Yid, I don't want to go through all the various ranks, but every Yid has his place in Hashem's world. And it's safeguarded for him. Nobody can take it away from him. And it's his because it's his and his path and his purpose in life. And only he can fill that role, that place. Except that by human beings, Hashem makes the human being, makes us partners with him. In the sense that he says, I gave every person his place. But you are to safeguard it. That's what it means in Lo Signov. You should not steal. You should not rob. You should not covet someone else's property. Because this is his snowflakes. And you're not supposed to collide. And here is where we become partners with the neighbors. And we recognize that everything has its place. By assignment from the neighbors. But we, because we are human beings, and we have the power of Bechira, we can by mistake and break that rule. And then we create havoc in the world. Except in this case, by human being, Hashem wanted us to participate. Through this, we should understand the word of Hashem. We should serve Hashem. We should recognize Hashem. The animals, Hashem guides them. But the human being, He gave them their choice. Because the human being, he had the intellect, and they understand that this is Hashem's world, and therefore they know fully how to respect it. And Hashem also gave them the Yetzer Hara, which tries to cover up and deviate their thought. And when he sees someone else's property, he says, "Oh, that looks good," and he blinds himself for the moment, not recognizing this is his, this is not yours. This is in order to make us partners with him in the world and to give us the reward that we deserve. Make the world a meaningful place. Having said that, I want to come now to Birchas Hachama. As I mentioned right in the beginning, a bracha, when we make a bracha on the moon, on Chidush Alvana, on the new moon, because the moon was rejuvenated, was reborn, we experience that rebirth, because here the moon was absent, was not functioning. We are missing its light, and now we get the light. So we make a bracha because there is a certain sense of excitement. We have the benefit of the moon, of the light of the moon. And in fact, if we can see the moon, we know the moon is rejuvenated, but the clouds are covering it all. We can make a bracha. You have to make a bracha when we benefit, when we actually experience that rebirth. Because it's something novel, and we get excited to make a bracha. Yes?
Is the benefit of the moon the fact that we know what month it is, or is it the light? What's the benefit actually?
The light.
So we have street lights.
Tides.
Would you exchange electric light for the sun?
Mm.
You have light. You have light in the middle of the night. Why are you so excited about daylight?
Because the sun causes the plants to grow, and without that we can't breathe.
True, but I'm talking about just the light itself. The moon also, by the way, moonlight also has effect on the plants. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Cucumbers grow by the light of the moon. All the cold vegetables. These lights and the street lights and all that, this is just the light, this is imitation. Whereas the luminaries, this is the real thing. It encompasses the whole world. So, in the case of the moon, a new moon, we can sense what we're making a bracha about. It's in our experience. But the sun, we don't see any difference. The whole inyan of making the bracha on the sun is based on on our intellect. There is no personal experience. This is a unique thing. It's a unique thing. We recognize this is the moment, we know this is the moment of the cycle of 28 years. Whoever keeps track of 28 years. But the calendar says this is when it happened. And we're reminded of the fact that this is when the sun was put into the sky, and that elicits by us an excitement to make a bracha. How is it? I mean, after all, I just said, there is nothing that should excite us. Why do we make a bracha? There's a dinim about making a bracha. The truth is that this is related to another phenomenon. The phenomenon of the miracle of the sun itself. In truth, the sun is an ongoing miracle, right in front of our eyes. Just as the world in general is an ongoing miracle, because I'll come back to why it's in the world. But in the sun, it kind of stares you right in the eyes. As Chassidus explains, and many of you, we already had a chance to discuss it, that the sun is a finite body, right? It's very large, but it has its measures. But it's still a finite body. And a finite body can only maintain a finite amount of energy, of power, of koyach. And here we have the sun that is shining with full power, without any diminishing quality, since the beginning of time. We're talking about thousands of years. Thousands of years. Without any sign of weakening. The very rotation of the sun is a miracle. The perfect rotation that doesn't vary over the entire, the infinite duration of time. You know that men have sent up what do you call it? Planets. They send up what's the word for it? Sputniks. Satellites. Man-made satellites. And the satellite was put into orbit around the Earth. And it's just in orbit. Nothing is disturbing it. And that's the principle upon which it is put. Because there's no atmosphere there, there's no air. So nothing is disturbing it. And therefore it will stay in orbit indefinitely. But we know that a satellite does not stay in orbit indefinitely. It stays in orbit a certain duration of time, and then it begins to falter.
Falter?
Fall apart, fall down.
Go to the earth? Or?
Yeah, to the earth, right? It falls down. That's why they destroy satellites, so that it shouldn't hit the earth. It's one of the difficulties that we are facing now, to make sure that a satellite, before it falls to the earth, is destroyed in the air. A whole bunch of debris flying around in the atmosphere. And it's natural. In anything that orbits has to go back to its original state. Here we have orbiting the sun, the moon, the planets, and they can be calculated to the moment exactly when it's going to occur. You know the calendar that we have, our calendar was calculated a couple of thousand years ago. Less than that, about 1600 years ago. By Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who realized that we're not going to have the great Chachamim anymore to be able to establish the calendar on a yearly basis. So he pre-calculated the calendar for all times. He pre-calculated it, and he was Mekadosh the Chodoshim. This is why we don't have Kiddush HaChodesh. We just say the Kiddush, but the real Kiddush was done then in Eretz Yisrael for all times. And it was done, if you ever heard when they say the Moilad Hanvoni, what the Moilad Hanvoni is? The birth of the Levana. The birth of the Levana, they announce it, the day, the hour, the minute, and Chalokim. Chalokim means 1080th moment, section of a moment, to the minutest degree.
Seconds.
No, much less than a second. a second is a 60th of a minute. This is more than 1,000th of a minute. Precisely. Nothing deviates. This doesn't happen by itself. Any person, so to speak, the way looking at this with his intellect, realizes he's not looking at the natural phenomenon, something happened by itself. Especially the power behind the sun. The sun is producing light, as I said, without diminishing for thousands of years. Power, not only light, heat, everything in the world is dependent on the sun. There's a whole industry now being developed of solar energy. You know what solar energy is? Solar energy is a method of capturing the energy coming from the sun and transforming it into energy, into electricity. There are different means that they do that. You heat up water, and the water turns turbines, it's a very young industry where it's being developed and it's being used already. There are in many instances here. I don't know if you ever saw. There are houses that have solar panels, and these solar panels actually capture the energy from the sun. And that house is heated exclusively from solar panels. Doesn't need a heating system. And this is something which is being developed, trying to replace the oil and other means of energy. So I once spoke to Professor Branover. You heard Professor Branover? Professor Branover. He is a big influence in this field of solar energy. He works in solar energy.
Professor?
Huh?
He's a professor?
He's a professor, yeah. He's a Frumarid. So I once asked Professor Brahman, I said, if you're going to capture the solar energy, like this, the sun hits the earth, and the heat of the sun is absorbed in the earth, and that keeps the atmosphere warm. You see the cycle. But if you're going to capture it in the tube, in a turbine, aren't you going to then affect the weather, affect the ecology and all that? Because you're going to steal some of the energy that the sun gives the earth. So he said to me that it's so infinitesimal, it's so insignificant, the amount of energy that we're going to steal from the sun, that it's not going to make any change, any difference. The amount of energy generated from the sun is infinite. It's not going to be noticed at all, no matter, even if you transform all heating systems into solar energy. It's not going to affect it. So the sun, as demonstrated to us, to our eye, that we should notice and recognize and see Hashem's presence in the world through the sun. That Hashem is maintaining the sun, rejuvenating the sun all the time. It's as young today as it was 5,000 years ago. Because its energy and its power is being rejuvenated, recreated. So this is an ongoing miracle. Once in 28 years, we celebrate that miracle. Really, this is an ongoing miracle. But once in 28 years, we know by calculation that this is the moment when this all started. And therefore we make a deal of it. We make a fuss of it. I asked originally something that we are used to, something that is common and that repeats itself all the time. How can you make a bracha? Not only do we make a bracha, but our nusach, our minhag is that we make a bracha for the creation, and we also make a bracha shechiyonu. Shechiyonu means that we are experiencing a special joy. But it's the same thing. It repeats itself. And this is the explanation.
Why don't we make a shechiyonu on the moon? Sorry.
Do you hold up the question? This is the explanation. The explanation is that there are two types of miracles. And to explain what I mean, I want to use an analogy of something that we've discussed in the past also. We have in this past century developed technology that was not heard of before, but couldn't even be imagined before. And among the things that we developed was the airplane. We have cars, we have steamboats, we have trains, one locomotive pulling 50 cars, all kinds of things, so to speak, by 18th century standards, it's completely out of whack, completely unimaginable. And we also have the airplane. There's an interesting thing. The Rambam, there's in Shmoina Prokim, there's the Rambam's Hagdoma, there's a Rambam's introduction to Pirkei Avos. It's called Shmoina Prokim Rambam, 8 Prokim, when he discusses various things about the Torah and about the world. So one of the things that the Rambam says over there is that Sfinas Barzel Tov Be'avir, that a steel ship should fly in the air, is impossible. That's what the Rambam says. It's impossible to conceive a ship made of steel to fly in the air. So this is something which kind of strikes us. The Rambam, it would seem that the Rambam is being proven wrong by the invention and development of the airplane. The airplane is truly a Sfinas Basel Tov B'Avir. It's a steel boat flying in the air. Last time I flew, this was, I went to Australia. I came back, and I flew there also. They use airplanes I've never seen before. I didn't know they existed. 2 stories. 2 full stories. Huge.
Titanic.
Huh?
Like a Titanic.
Like a ship. You can walk around, staircase. And it flies in the air. You're going down the whole Pacific, talking about 14 hours straight in the air. It's a huge plane, it's a huge boat flying in the air. So, many people feel kind of, hit hard with something the Rambam says that's impossible. But here it's proven it's done. So one of the explanations that I explained this is the following. It becomes a little bit more technical, which I'm going to skip, but just the point that what the Rambam is speaking about is that the human mind, that's exactly what he's talking about, the human mind, that the human mind should be able to relate to a ship flying in the air is impossible. If it happens something that the human mind cannot relate to. And the fact is, all of you were born after the airplanes were flying in the air, right? You all saw airplanes flying when you were children. Not like somebody by whom this was a novelty in middle age, in middle life. Something that you were born, so you're completely used to it. It's nothing novel. And yet, whenever an airplane flies over the overhead, what do we do? What's our natural reaction? Look up. You look up. Why do you look up? You haven't seen an airplane? Did you ever turn around and hear a car move and say turn around and see how the car is moving? Who cares? Car moves. It's also a technical achievement. And yet, for the car you don't turn around. And for the airplane you turn around. Why? Because in fact the human mind cannot relate to it. So every time you see it, it's like a new thing. There are people who live right near the airport, like in the Rockaways, they live near the airport. And planes are flying all the time. And planes are flying, you could see the size of them, huge planes. And every time, you can't help it. You just can't help it. You have to look up. Because something that the human mind cannot conceptualize, I said there's another technical things, which I'm not going into it, it becomes an ongoing miracle. You can't get used to it, you can't accept it. The sun is an ongoing miracle. There's no way we can conceptualize what the sun is. Except that we are so preoccupied with our little things, with our trivialities, with our momentary needs and concerns, that we don't pay attention to Hashem's world, to the world, to the greatness that we are being given gratis, experience it, feel it, understand it. But really, every time you look up at the sun, it's a miracle. Not in the sun, in daylight. You wake up in the morning, it's a new world. I'm in daylight. Wow, it's daylight already. You haven't saw the daylight, see daylight all the time. Because it's really something beyond human conception. So really, we should be making a bracha on the sun every day, because we constantly experience its novelty. Except we don't do that every day. The Chachomim established that once in 28 years, when in fact it actually represents the moment of creation, then we should really pay attention to it. We should really recognize, like we said, Nasa v'nishma. We should recognize what it is that we are experiencing, what it is that we see, and reflect on both the miracle of the sun and the miracle of creation, and relate to that moment of creation when the sun was put on Wednesday morning into the sky. This approach, this phenomenon, this activity, this exercise is a means by which we acknowledge Hashem's creation. We acknowledge Hashem's presence, and we give a bracha, we give thanks and so forth. And it is also a means for us to experience and to break out of our little selves. We all need things. We all are concerned, have our concerns. But due to our concerns, we fail to see and experience everything, all the greatness that Hashem gives us. All the wonderful things that Hashem gives us. As a result of that, we fail to recognize the closeness, the degree of closeness that Hashem is to us. And as a result of that, when we need something, we get lost. We say, where are we going to get it? How are we going to get it? We're alone in this big, wide, wild world. How are we going to get it? Look up in the world, look up at the sun, look up at everything else, and see how Hashem's hand is present in everything around you. Except for you, the human being, for you to eat, Hashem has given you the intellect, given you intelligence. So that He wants that you should recognize it through your intelligence. He could have taken care of all your needs without any problem, obviously. And He could have, like shown you the ongoing miracle. He should say, oh, wait, look at this. It's actually happening, He didn't do that. He wants that we should participate. With our intellect, we should identify it. Because when you identify it with our intellect, then it becomes part of us. Then we are elevated. We become part of that miracle. Then we truly experience it. Then the miracle is not merely to satisfy our concerns. Then the miracle actually gives us a real recognition of what life is and how we serve Hashem. There's a story of Rav Shmuel Munkis. Everybody heard of Shmuel Munkis? Shmuel Munkis? Sure, you heard of Shmuel Munkis?
Sounds a little familiar, but I don't remember exactly.
Okay. You'll like it. He would like you. Shmuel Munkis was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe.
Yeah.
Right? He was a sharp. He was also a very, very great man. But all his greatness was hidden, was camouflaged. And externally, he was a joker. You like that already, right?
I see myself.
You could exchange you're joking for greatness first, then you can joke. Anyway, Shmuel Munkes was one time a guest. He was in an inn. You know what an inn is? A motel like. Small, in those days, it was small inns. Motel. And this was the night during Slichas days. When you say Slichas in the morning, Elo time. So in the morning, the owner, the motel keeper, is waking him. Rabbi, wake up! What? Wake up! It's time to go to Slichas. So Shmuel turns around and says, "What's Slichas? The Slichas? What kind of Amoras are you in the Slichas? Slichas is when you go to shul and you ask Hashem that the cow should give milk and the chicken should lay eggs and the tree should produce fruit. Everything should work. Yeah, that's." So Shmuel says, in my life, I didn't see adult people get up in the middle of the night asking for food. Kids wake up in the morning, in the middle of the night, asking for a bati. But adults should get up in the middle of the night asking for food? I never heard of any such thing. See, without trivialities, they miss the real greatness that's going on. Hashem wants us to be great and to appreciate greatness. And this is why there are these trivial things which are necessary. Maybe we should place everybody that they should have everything that they need. But Hashem wants us to recognize what this is about, how it comes to be. What is the meaning of the blade of grass? What is the meaning of sunshine? What is the meaning of daylight? What is the meaning of a snowflake? He wants us to recognize His presence amongst us, with us. So that when we do have a piece of bread, we know it came to us from Hashem's hand. We didn't steal it from the earth, like we spoke about, the from Bracha. It came again from Hashem's hand. So that we live at a higher level than handle the enemy. And we truly represent Hashem's presence in the world. Hashem should help each one of us, should help us have the strength to open our eyes, open our minds and hearts, and truly appreciate life as it's meant to be. And each one should have a successful life, which will succeed in all that they need. And we should also have a kosher feilach on Pesach. Pesach is also the rejuvenation of the Jewish nation, I'm sure you know. So a kosher feilach on Pesach should have a joyous. Pesach is for Ruchnis, Tishrei is for Gashmis, and Pesach is for Ruchnis. You should have a successful year in acquiring insight and acquiring Ruchnis, and elevate it and to be able to intellectually and emotionally develop. So that when it comes to Tishrei and we get Hashem's physical, material blessings, we will know how to appreciate it, know how to use it.